The allegory of the cave stands as a prevailing image of the Western philosophical tradition. Though cited ubiquitously, covert is its damning operation, enforcing an ontological submission while assuming a description of what it means to be free. The power of the allegory lies in its simplicity. A story of an imprisoned lot, shadows and light purporting the natures of ignorance, knowledge, enlightenment as well, presented as a work of total completion in a narrative of philosophical awakening. Abscond from illusion, from delusion, and awaken, saith the prophet. Awaken and ascend unto truth. A call to question the old norm, its emphasis a query, yet the familiarity of the allegory scarcely ever seeing demands for its own questioning, all the while persistent in its perfidious touting. The allegory commences with a small collective of humans imprisoned in a subterranean cave since birth, their limbs and necks restrained, forcing them to face but a single wall standing before them for the entirety of their lives. Behind them, purposefully and perfectly positioned from their sights, roars a fire, and between said fire and our hapless captives, objects of various forms, people, trees, animals, are carried along the path in the space between. These objects then cast shadows, which the prisoners could only mistake for reality. By such strategic deception, the foundation of their metaphysics is forcibly laid. Unbeknownst of their position, this is their everything and their all, and as human beings treat their existence with the same seriousness as we do ours. We defend our positions as matters of survival, in nature and later within the constructs of society. We form bonds with others to concretize our beliefs, in order to maintain our sense of selves, respectively and communally. Collectively, we commit to ideology, for it is the ideology that ensures commitment to the collective. Collectively, we commit to ideology, for it is the ideology that ensures commitment to the collective. We label, name, and classify, distinguishing here and there, allocating values and awarding statuses. Our beliefs, both manufactured and maintained by the tribe, frames the very experiences that define our lives. So, they labeled, named, and classified as such. Debating these shadow forms, designating, value forming, and thus awarding statuses among themselves for the most clever at distinguishing patterns among the shadows. The intention of Plato here is clear. The imprisoned represent humanity. The shadows symbolize the inherent deceptions of a sensory world. The cave, a byproduct of an unexamined, unphilosophical life. Those there confined being neither malicious nor immoral, but simply mistaken. Their error lies in their confusing mere appearance for the truth, mere perspectives for absolutes, meager perception for knowledge. This is most perceptive of Plato. His allegory is acute, poignant, and elegantly illustrated. However, its flaw remains inexcusable. Its Despite its precise diagnosis of a blind humanity, it errs in insisting that reality only exists elsewhere. This, of course, the basis of his brand of metaphysics and theory of forms, which he'll be surely shelling later. The concern of greater import is not the conviction of the prisoners, but that they are in a forced ontological state of submission. They are not creating what they see. Others have. The truth of reality, Plato would declare, is a thing already formed, complete, and but awaiting recognition. The self, Plato asserts, is no point of origin, but merely a passive recipient. The subtlety of this assumption, the very stealthiness of its quiet embedding, establishes the very hierarchical epistemic structuring of the allegory. That the reality of life precedes the individual, and that the individual must concede to it. At the core of the moral is submission, and that just ain't gonna work. The shadows themselves are regarded as false, yet to what other alternative shall we defer when all we could ever know is materialized from this inescapable circumstance? Does that not now become itself a new reality to some extent, that the inhabitants not named, no different than the early surface dwellers did? Does it not mirror identically, though on a smaller level, the exact determination of our reality? Of an experience illuminated by a fire in a cave as those illuminated by a sun outside of a cave? This outside or figurative prison when compared to the heavens? No? It is recyclic redundancy excluding the self. Thus unpiloted, directionless, and doomed to remain in the tragedy of its condition until some external light of enlightenment, forced upon us, enters into frame as one's salvation. This is proto-Christianity. Plato simplistically dismisses these distortions without considering that aforementioned naming and interpreting and ordering and structuring that gave the captives some measure of self-governance to begin with, constituting a form of power in their own right, regardless of how little. He demands their elucidation come at the hands of submission, when in fact these prisoners were not condemned because they were born to passivity, but because they were deceived into mistaking immediacy for authority. The greater, more fundamental lesson here being not that the shadows are lies, but that no reality authored by this cave can ever offer truth. That no reality authored by that cave could ever author truth. Behind the prisoners the fire burns, providing the light to produce its shadows. Plato treats this fire as an inferior source of illumination, utilitarian to some degree, but ultimately a deception. It is not true light, the allegory affirms, yet its admittedly meager flame remains immediate, local, and instrumental, scaled to human use. From the I-Theistic outlook, If allowed the indulgence of some amateur psychoanalysis, it appears that the fire is something that Plato cannot afford to leave undiminished, because it threatens, with an attempt at self-governance, the transcendence he's attempting to sell. He'll be surely shelling later. The fire, a projection of Plato, represents, regardless how little, a source of power that did not originate beyond human creation, and therefore could not, would not command submission. The chains, though scarcely visible, are binding all the same. The action of the allegory comes into form when one of the prisoners is freed, though scarcely liberated. He is compelled to turn to this fiery revelation and is made to ascend from the darkness of his cave. The process is tormentous. The process is tormentous, with the acclamation of light burning the physical eyes, whereas the eye of the mind, too, suffers its immediate ontological shock, and later the assumed subsequent growth pangs in the form of his longing for familiarity, those of cavernous shadows. Plato points to the natural resistances evidenced in our prisoners squirming as necessary prelude to enlightenment. Necessary prelude to enlightenment. Less than subtle, he intimates that our edification is forced, that our education, our knowing, our assimilation unto truth is never a thing chosen, but one imposed, one we must suffer and endure. This shatters the disguise of coercion hidden within the allegory. This shatters the disguise of coercion hidden within the allegory. That true liberation is never self-initiated. Our prisoner is never able to seek any enlightenment. It is thrust-fisted into his eye, into his mind, into his spirit. Its very imposition, just that, a violation. Countless examples can be given on how the ends justify the means. But when considering the particulars of this allegorical ascension, it must be noted that the enlightenment came from absconding from the previous location, from leaving behind the former condition, which vastly improves the situation, but does not altogether correct it. Substitution is not transcendence. Substitution is not transcendence. Emerging from the cave, the freshly liberated prisoner encounters the new fire, the burning sun, identified by Plato with the form of the good. This good, the source of all being and truth, not merely larger than the previous fire, but a burning celestial fire of a superior scope. The sun does not participate in the world. It governs it. It exists within its own ineffable sovereignty, unquestioned and unauthored. It is the all which Plato denies to the self. His deepest impression, that truth must be unconditioned, that anything forged from human hands is necessarily suspect, that this ghost of good, however, pre-exists the exister, taking precedence, preceding the experiencer, and with cringy temerity it reiterates the myth of metaphysical absolutes, that the authority of this divine sun alone could give meaning, bestowing purpose with the shower of its light. Our existence is a mere pittance of its deigning to give us worth, our only value given by its light. and only insofar as it may choose to mercifully reflect upon us groveling nobodies, to which I would say, go fuck yourself, wanker. But that wouldn't be prudent. So onward to the final movement of the allegory. Now our enlightened prisoner, having seen the light, ventures back to the former residence, the ominous cave which cruelly prevented his flourishing and that of his tribe folk, and he does so with the noblest of intentions, to save said tribesmen from their errors, and gift them with the greatest gift of any conceivable gift, the illumination of life beyond our prisons, true enlightenment, to receive the truth of the real world to which we were all born and entitled. With the most noblest of heroic intentions, he proceeds unto the darkness, where his eyes, newly accustomed to the sun, struggles to find his footing in the dark. He struggles with his vision, stumbling as he ventures into the black of the cave. Naturally, he cannot identify the shadows with any measure of accuracy. The prisoners within mock him with laughter and derision, laugh at his inability to operate as normal, to function properly. He, as a result of leaving the cave, has become damaged. Proof positive of the dangers of the outside. This but reaffirms their authority of shadow knowledge. This is the most revealing moment of all. Knowledge becomes justification for authority. Knowledge becomes justification for authority. Knowledge becomes justification for authority. Mankind is declared incapable of sovereignty for lacking a transcendent standard. The philosopher liberates no prisoner. He governs them like the fire, like the sun. The enlightenment of Plato and all things Platonic are but forms of metaphysical abdication. The self rejects the immediacy of experience, authorship, and his personal autonomy in exchange for obedience to another order. The cave, not just a site of illusion, but one of human meaning. Again, the tragedy is not merely that the prisoners miscategorize their experiences, but that they are taught that reality must exist elsewhere. The contradiction asserted by I-Theism towards the Platonic framework is nothing short of heretical, and would proceed as follows: that being does not precede the self, being issues from it. Being does not precede the self, being issues from the self. A truth that cannot be forged by the individual is merely some other larger cave. This has been Herchen Moral, I-Theism in Philosophy. Enjoy your evening.